Hi, Orange Girl here with another process video for you. I am working with a cut file from the Cut Shop today as my first assignment as a design team member. And I'm going to start by showing you how I set it up in my Silhouette Cameo software to cut this because I'm going to do a bunch of stitching today. All right, I thought I would show you how I prepare in the Silhouette software my image so that when it cuts it, it actually is going to cut little dots instead of the line so that it's not actually cutting the file, it's just preparing it so that I can do my hand stitching. So I have the file, it's ready to go. I have it in black. I was hoping that would help you see it a little bit better than the red. And the first thing I'm going to do is there's parts of this that I don't want to cut. So if I were to cut this out, just on regular cardstock, using the regular settings and everything, these little triangles here would be great and required. But I don't need to stitch those, so I'm going to take those away. So the way to do that is to go to your Modify window. And you can see down here, this is where you would weld and different things like that. I'm going to release the compound path. And when you do that, it makes all of these their own little image. And so you can delete all of the little triangles. And so I'm going to go through really quickly here, and I'm going to do that first. And then after I do that, I'm going to make it a compound path again, just by doing the same thing, selecting it all this time and making it a compound path. I do this a lot with, not just to prepare it for stitching, I do this a lot, oops, I do this a lot if there's something on the image that I don't want. Like, so for example, if you cut down something and it has a whole bunch of different words on it and you want just some of the words or something like that. So you can use this technique, or whatever you want to call it, this way of doing things for just about any cut file that you don't want part of it to cut. So I'm taking this part out here. Sorry, this is taking a little bit of time. And then I am going to change the lines to dotted lines. Basically what I do is I take the solid lines, change them to dotted lines, and then I retrace it, because by retracing, it's going to trace the dotted lines and make those dotted lines actual holes instead of lines. I don't know, I think you might be able to cut it if it was stitch, if it was a slit, like a dotted line. But the holes do make it a little bit easier in my opinion. So I don't even know why I use the settings that I use when I do this. When you see me trace it and stuff, I think I just use it because I saw it somewhere. I don't even remember where I saw how to do this. I'm sorry, otherwise I would give them credit. So once I have everything ready, so you can see all of those dotted lines are out and you can see the rainbows even more now, I'm going to go over to the trace. No, I'm sorry, not the trace. I'm going to go over to the lines. It's right up here, the line style, and I am going to go to the third one down. So now, oops, sorry. I'm doing this all wrong because I'm doing it in front of you. First, I need to select it all and make it a compound path. So now it's all one, and I can't just delete part of it. I would delete the whole thing. Make sense? So then I go over to the lines, and I change it to the third one down, which is the dotted lines that aren't the thickest and aren't the thinnest, or kind of in the middle, and you can kind of see that. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. I wouldn't normally have to do that, but you can kind of see how it's dotted lines now. I changed the thickness to 23, which just makes it a little bit thicker. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but now I'm going to zoom back out so that you can see what I'm going to do next, because I want to make sure I get the whole image. So now that I have my dotted lines, I am going to retrace this file. So I'm going to go to the trace tool, select trace area. Sorry, click that. And I'm going to select the whole area. I want to trace the whole thing. So you can see it all turned yellow. And then I click trace. Once I have done that, this was my original here. And now when I zoom in, you're going to see that what is traced here are a little more like holes. And once those holes are cut, then it'll be easier for me to stick my needle in there and do the stitching. And that's pretty much it. That's what I do. And I have the cutter do all the work that I would normally do for a regular cut file. All right, so now let's take a look at the layout. Okay, so my stitching is all done, and I did that all off camera, and I stitched my rainbows. And now I have decided I'm going to use this Sunshine and Rainbows piece from Colorcast Designs as my title, but I needed it to be black. So I'm just using some black gesso over the top, and at this point I didn't even know if it was going to work or not. I have spray painted acrylic pieces before, but I hadn't done this before, but it does end up working. So then I'm going to add another cut file to the mix here. This is called Happy Clouds, and I am backing, like, I think I back like 5 or 6 different sized clouds on this layout, and it just kind of adds a little element to it. And that right there in the background, you can see my first little peek at what the rainbows do look like. My idea here is I'm going to use these Dear Lizzy papers. It's a 6x6 pad for most of my backing of this cut file, but I also use a little bit of Chanel's most recent collection as well. That one 12x12 paper that I think I'm actually going to use as my background, not background, but the border around the outside, but I don't end up doing that. I end up changing that to a black. Because I cut that, I'm not cut, excuse me, because I painted that acrylic piece black, I needed to add more black to the paper, so you'll see as I do that throughout the layout. So all I do here is sometimes I cut it ahead, I draw it and cut it out. Sometimes I just go ahead and glue it down and then cut around it like I'm doing here. And I do that with several different clouds for this layout. But they're all from that same cut file, the Happy Clouds one. So once I finished doing that, I found some flare from a Flare for Buttons, and here's where I decided it needed a little bit more black. So I'm going to add some black behind my photo and a couple of black clouds. And then I also changed my border paper to a black and white check. And that's an old piece. I do not know where the black and white came from. I couldn't tell you the collection. But the rest is from mostly Dear Lizzy, and then a little bit from Chanel. Now all I have left really to do is to go ahead and glue everything down. I didn't want to add too many embellishments because I did do so much stitching, and some of it is already getting cut up, or not cut up, covered up. And I apologize here that I did have to do a lot of my filming at night. We've been really busy around this place lately, and so I just have to sneak in a little bit of scrapping when I can. So I'm gluing everything down. I did leave a little area free from stitching, and that is where my photo is and the clouds. There was just no point in stitching if I knew that's where my photo was going to go to begin with. So I'm adding 3 pieces of flare for the Flare for Buttons. I also add some Shimmer's paint in here, and I add some thread just to add a few pops of colors throughout the page, and then I am pretty much done. Here come the close-ups. This was a fun one to make. It did take a long time to do all of that stitching, but I really like how it turned out, so I'm glad that I did it. I did most of it sitting in front of the TV or sitting at the hospital with my family. My dad is getting much better, but he is still in an assisted living situation for now until we can bring him home. So anyway, thanks a lot for stopping by. This was fun to make, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video.